Coming up next on the show, Alex, Katelyn, and I talk about this new Boston Marathon logo and the curious facelift they gave the unicorn. Then we get into a brief history of the running influencer. We go back to the beginnings. We talk about the role they now play in the industry, whether or not we love them, love to hate them, hate to love them, a combination of all three. Some influencers that we can't get enough of, some that we hate watch or follow. And Alex provides a really interesting insight because he's actually done quite a bit of research on this and quite a bit of reporting on it in the past. So that's a fun one. And then finally, we pick Katelyn's brain about pre-run and pre-race fueling, what we eat, when we eat it, what the science says, what each of us individually does, depending on the situation, long run, race, marathon, ultra, 5K, 10K, easy run. We break it all down. And we also talk about the stupidest mistakes we've made with eating before a run or not. All right, let's get into the show. All right, I'm joined by Alex and Katelyn. And before we jump to our main topics for the day, guys, did you see this? Did a tweet, a post on social media, we'll call it. I don't even know what to call a tweet anymore. From the Boston Marathon, the BAA, Boston Athletic Association, that they've changed their logo moving forward, and they've given the unicorn like a literal facelift. You guys seen this?
Yeah. I did see it yesterday or this morning, and I was checking out the changes to see, I don't know, what was new. I mean, it didn't seem so incredibly different than the last logo. I don't know what you guys think about that, but
yeah, the unicorn is now looking to the right. It used to be looking to the left. Mm-hmm. Like that's the main thing.
Flipped.
That and the athletic jawline that the unicorn now has.
Ooh. It's a fit unicorn.
It's a fit unicorn.
Yes.
It's a unicorn that could qualify with the open standard at the Boston Marathon. This unicorn does not have to wait to be 40 plus to get in with an age graded standard. I get the reason why they did this. I get that they've got a new sponsor, that they everything felt a little rushed going into last year. Everything felt a little kind of like shoehorned in with Bank of America coming on board and John Hancock, the insurance company that was for many years the title sponsor, going away. And there was a lot of criticism. You guys remember, Alex, you and I were both in Boston. There was a lot of criticism around that medal. I mean, the medal looked kind of gaudy. It looked kind of weird, right? It had the big Bank of America logo on the bottom of it. Felt very, the ratio was way off compared to the unicorn. So it seems like with this logo, they're saying like, guys, don't worry. We're going to tone it back a little bit. We're going to make this look a little bit more clean, streamlined, and we're also going to like kind of shoehorn in a whole bunch of other jargon about why we've changed the look of the unicorn. Do you like it?
I like it. I just feel like in the vertical, like you just still really see the Bank of America.
It's jumping out at you.
Yeah, it does. It does jump out at me. So I don't know if it makes the biggest difference. I did see the medals. I didn't run Boston last year, but I've been reading the uproar and the upset runners with the new medal with the big logo on it. And I feel like, I guess they're trying to make it blend in a little bit. The Bank of America written under the new logo, but I mean, I still see it. It still looks pretty prominent to me. I don't know. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I don't mind it. When I heard there was going to be a new logo, I expected the worst because isn't like every company now coming out with a new logo that just looks crappier and more pared down and they take out the vowels? Like all these tech companies are making these logos tiny. I was expecting like BSTN, blue and yellow, 4 letters, no unicorn, no nothing.
Oh, no.
So I think like this is better than what I expected.
Or like just the horn, they get rid of the rest of the unicorn. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like that. So one little fussy detail is I noticed that they've they've modified the horn. The horn doesn't have the little like grooves in it anymore. And
Oh yeah.
they got rid of the grooves. And there's a bunch of marketing jargon around this too. Like, they break down like the reason why there's X number of like flips or points in the unicorn's mane now that represents the 13
Spike's mane. Spike.
Oh,
His
Spike,
name is
sorry.
Spike.
That's right. The unicorn's name is Spike. I forgot. Which is nice that they acknowledge that it is the unicorn's name is Spike in the press release. But yeah, it just feels like what it's doing is it's putting spin on or trying to turn into a positive what was like a pretty harsh negative last year this past year in the marathon, which was no one liked the medal. Everyone was super disappointed, and rightfully so. Historically, the Boston Marathon medal is kind of the classiest, most desirable of medals. Not only just because it's really hard to get into the race, it's really hard to qualify, it's hard to finish, it's a hard race itself, so it's a well-earned medal. But also just because like I think it was always seen as really tastefully done and really an understated medal compared to some of the like dinner plates and sort of trashy attempts at making medals that really stand out that are ultimately just pretty gaudy for the most part. This one was always really nice and austere.
Yeah.
And the Bank of America logo kind of took away from that and kind of wrecked that a little bit, right? So, yeah, and also not to mention the civil legal problems the Boston Marathon is currently facing and accusations of a lack of diversity and inequity. And I think that they're trying to spin a lot of what they're doing in a very different direction. And Alex, I mean, we noticed this past year covering the race in person in Boston that and I'd heard rumors of this in the last couple of years that with a changing of the guard at the BAA, the Boston Athletic Association, which runs the race, there's been a real push more towards a deeper corporatization of the event and of the organization. And I think that this is like an obvious example of that.
Oh my God, I got it. I was trying to figure out what this reminded me of. It's the Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
This is the Denver Broncos logo.
Yes.
Oh,
Absolutely,
man.
Alex. Yeah, you got it. You hit the nail on the head.
Go Google that. It's like the Denver Broncos with a horn. I think there's grounds for a copyright lawsuit.
Oh my goodness. And also that's a little bit of a punch in the gut for the BAA because that Denver Bronco, that logo's been around a long time. So that's kind of like a bit of an aged look, if you ask me, like a little outdated maybe. But anyway, not to tear them down too badly. I understand that, you need to refresh your look every once in a while. And I think it is great that they ultimately kind of kept everything in place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you'll recognize it no matter what. They didn't do any huge changes or anything like Alex was saying, make it letters or something. I mean, the essence is there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So the one little criticism is like, oh man, why can't they change that Bank of America logo to be that, what is it? Maize, I believe is the yellow, is the actual name of the color of yellow that Boston Marathon uses. I believe it's maize, like corn. Just change it all to be that unified color and it would look a lot slicker. And it would nail that subtlety that I think everyone is longing for.
It would blend in, yeah.
So this was released on Global Running Day. So we're recording Thursday afternoon, and the podcast goes out on Friday. So Global Running Day was on Wednesday, as I discovered on Tuesday morning. No, it was earlier than that. It came across the desk that Global Running Day was happening yet again this year. Guys, what is Global Running Day? Like, what's the point? What are we doing here?
I don't know.
Every day
There's a day
Global
for
Running Day? No.
Yeah, well, when I was a kid, we had Mother's Day and Father's Day, and the first time that I registered that, I think, was when I was 4 or 5 years old. And then after Father's Day, which comes after Mother's Day, I hit my parents with okay, we've had Father's Day, we've had Mother's Day. When is Children's Day? And then they hit me with every day is Children's Day, Alex.
Yeah.
And I feel the same about this. If you run every day, why celebrate Global Running Day? in one day.
Guess what? In Costa Rica, there is a Children's Day.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh God, I should have moved there.
Because I remember as being a teacher for so many years, we always had a Children's Day. So it was like a day of activities and stuff for the kids. And I was like, and I remembered my mother's voice. Alex, she said exactly the same thing. Well, because every day is Kids Day. Every day. She
Well, there's
said the
probably
same
a Kids
thing.
Day. There's probably a Kids. We're in Canada. There's probably a Kids Day in Canada too. There's a day for everything. There's
And that's what this
Kittens Day.
is.
There's,
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
what this is. This is somebody, I think it was, I remember this, like maybe 6-7 years ago, someone was looking at one of those online calendars that was like, today is International Popcorn Day, and today is like Hug Your Best Friend Day, and today is also Global Running Day. And someone made a big deal out of it, I think at the time on Twitter, and it immediately marketers were like, wait a minute, there's a Global Running Day? Let's sink our teeth into that. And then the following year, it was this gong show of like activations and coupon codes and discounts and influencers who we'll talk about later, or just, you know, like hawking the wares on Instagram. I remember, I think it was like 2016 maybe. I remember going to an event being hosted by one brand at a park in Toronto, and on Global Running Day, to celebrate Global Running Day. And they were doing some sort of activation where it was like, come try on our new shoe and run around the track for a little while. And then there was like another brand that was at the same park, and neither realized that the other was going to be setting up. And then there was a third brand up on the hill, and that was Lululemon. And everyone wanted to be at the Lululemon pop-up, because I think they were giving something away, or I think they were giving away like ice cream or something like that. And it just turned into this kind of a total shit show. It was just like dueling brands in the same park, kind of all trying to sell you the same thing. So,
you know that scene on Anchorman when all the news outlets meet in the town square and start fighting?
it was that. It was definitely that. Yeah, and Lululemon's kind of like Ron Burgundy in that situation. But yeah, it's weird. I did go for a run. I looked around the running landscape yesterday. I didn't see a whole lot going on besides kind of what we did, which was just we sent out a newsletter and we were like, it's Global Running Day. You love running. We love running. This is awesome. Make sure you go for a run today, which, you know, I think is a great sentiment. And I got the newsletters I subscribe to in the running universe, kind of we all did the same thing. It's a bit kind of calorie empty in a certain respect. It did get me thinking about like the history and purpose of Global Running Day and kind of what we're doing with it. But yeah, I just did you guys run?
Yes.
Oh, Alex, sorry.
I did not. I'm still hurt, but I celebrated Global Running Day by hiring a coach. And that's a story for another podcast.
Whoa.
Oh,
Whoa.
we need
Yeah.
to talk.
Tease. Big tease.
Because I did not get that phone call.
Ouch. You didn't even think it. You walked right into that one, Alex.
This Katelyn, I tried and you didn't answer your phone.
Oh,
and maybe
yeah.
it's the countries, the connection. I don't know.
When invariably you give in and you convert to the trails because it's just more fun to run on
Yep.
the trails, ultimately, then you'll come
Right.
begging.
Yeah, no, I got
Caitlin.
scared. I got scared, Katelyn. I got scared. I know what your mileage is, and I can't. Maybe when I'm a lot more durable.
All right. Well, we'll hear more about that in a future in a
Yes.
future pod. I'm curious to hear about the man who claimed he was able to self-coach and his move to being coached. I'm curious to hear about
Coach
that.
the
All right.
untrainable. Let's see.
Coach the uncoachable. Ooh.
The uncoachable.
Shots fired by Katelyn. All right, we'll take a quick break, and then we're going to get into a brief history of running influencers. We'll be right back. All right, and we're back. We're going to talk about running influencers. It's a topic that the three of us discuss on a regular basis. They're have become a huge part of the running community, the running industry in the last number of years. There's very blurred lines between what an influencer is and isn't these days, particularly in running. And so I thought we'd unpack this. We do a little brief history. We'd go back and see if we can figure out sort of ground zero, the birth of the running influencer, and talk a little bit about the evolution of this. I guess it's a profession, way of life, side hustle, main hustle, depending on who you are. And Alex, I know you're kind of like, I would describe you as an expert in the field at this stage, because you've actually written a really in-depth feature article for a magazine about this subject a couple of years back. You know influencers. We all know running influencers. We've all interacted with them in various capacities at events, on press junkets, all these sorts of things. And I'm curious to hear your take on them and sort of how this has evolved over the last bunch of years. So let's start by getting into the time machine and going back to a long time ago, before social media, if anyone can remember a time before we stared at our phones constantly. Let's talk a little bit about early running influencers, people who predate social media and the impact that social media has had on the space.
That's a funny thing to think about, right? Because when you say running influencer, we start thinking about these last couple years. But it's true that when I think back of when I started running, I had influences, and not just the people around me, but the people that I would seek out online. And before then, even in books. So Katelyn and Michael, you got into running before me. The books that I read were a little bit aged by the time I got into it. But, we think of these authors who positioned themselves as authorities on running before Facebook, before Instagram. There was Dean Karnazes.
Dean Karnazes.
Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I think
Karnazes.
Yeah. Yep.
Ultra
We
guy?
had an ultra guy. There was I remember having this book that was like chicken soup. You know the chicken soup books?
Yes, for the soul. Chicken soup for the soul.
Chicken soup. Yeah, chicken soup for the runner's soul. And in it there were essays from running writers. And these people, I looked them up on an early version of the internet and started, following their news articles, stuff like that. Those were early influencers. But I think of the people who influenced me when I started, getting competitive. And they were high-level athletes. I think these were my influencers, right? They were probably the only runners who had a platform. As if you ran fast, you made the Olympics or World Championship, people would start following you. And also around that time, they were mainly the only athletes who were able to get brand deals, right? Get free gear from Nike, Saucony, even money from these companies too. And then I remember it to be 2015. So I was about 19 years old at the time. Something changed. YouTube became a lot more popular, but from where I stand, I think it was even Instagram that supercharged this influencing movement. These pro athletes got onto Instagram and then started to develop a following, but not just them. Soon, people realized that they could build a big following by being runners online. And then soon after that, I think brands started realizing that, hey, speed doesn't really matter in building a big following. And it might make more sense to sponsor somebody who has, 50,000 followers, but runs at a slower pace and doesn't stand a chance of making an Olympic team, than to sponsor someone who's going to be at the Olympics, but who doesn't want to post online. And I think in the last few years, we're hearing a lot more about running influencers. We're seeing it a lot more because I think a lot more people have gotten into running. And what do they do when they get into running? They seek people with whom they resonate. So maybe that's not the Olympian, but maybe that's like the person who runs at a recreational level and who posts a reel every day. I think we're in a running boom right now. We have I remember seeing a stat, I think 25% of current runners started during the pandemic. So we're in this space where there are a whole lot of new beginning runners. Everybody's on Instagram. And so it's becoming very easy for someone to post content and build a big following, getting attention from brands, and then getting a deal. I have a friend, okay, and he wouldn't mind me mentioning him because all I'm giving him is a compliment. His Instagram handle is runnerjmd, and he's from Eastern Canada. About a year ago, he had maybe 1,000 followers about a year ago, which I guess is an ordinary follower count these days. He started posting one reel a day, one reel every 2 days, let's call it, of him running with a motivational quote, sometimes little funny skits. Sometimes he'd be running with his kids, with his wife, sometimes just himself. And it took him months to start to build a following, but when he did, it just skyrocketed. Now my friend, he's a quick runner. You know, he's a fast runner. I think he's run like a 2:30 marathon, but he's not an Olympic level runner. His followers shot up to about 100,000. I think he's hovering around 100,000 now. And that's it. Like, he doesn't need to run a 2:10 marathon to get there. It's just constant posting. People like his stuff. So brands are catching on to that, right? It's like, hey, you know, we have someone who's consistently going to post. They want to play the game a little bit. They want to engage with their followers. They're going to answer comments. Why not sponsor this person as opposed to someone who's super quick but doesn't want to engage? Mm-hmm. So now we're in this movement where, like, it seems like every runner is an influencer, and every influencer is starting to be a runner. And the line between both is becoming somewhat blurred.
Yeah, I mean, I think back, and there's a similarity to like a few of the old timers. I think about like pre social media, like Bart Yasso, who was the runner in chief at Runner's World for a number of years, and then just like toured the Marathon Expo circuit, like Pearl Jam goes on tour, just like, you know, 80 dates a year, they somehow pull it off. He was like hitting every single Marathon Expo, and he developed a cult of personality. Same with Dean Karnassus, and even Jeff Galloway, the guy who pioneered the walk, run, walk thing, John Bingham, who was the Penguin runner. These guys were guys who kind of expanded the idea that, you know, you could run and run slowly, and that's cool and that's fine, and that connected with a lot of people in the 90s, in particular in the early 2000s, as there was the kind of baby boom, running boom in the early 2000s. And then our very own Amby Burfoot, who is, you know, deeply involved in what we do and kind of is one of our patron saint. You know, he's a former Runner's World editor, and he went from being an athlete to being someone who was then a journalist, but then also kind of became a running celebrity and personality himself as well. And I guess they were the pioneers of that because they built out this personality. And the sense was you kind of knew the person to a degree, right? Either back in the day it was writing an editorial on a regular basis, or just getting yourself in front of a microphone whenever possible, and doing your song and dance at an expo, talking about like, okay, here's how you pace out a marathon, and who's running the marathon for the first time this year. You know, let me give you some advice, that sort of thing. Let me tell you some of my stories. And in a way, a lot of influencers are kind of doing the same thing. It's the same set of moves. It's what psychologists call developing a one-way parasocial relationship, which is that you let a person feel, you share details of your life to a degree, and it makes the person feel as though they know you. And Instagram in particular, YouTube as well, certainly, and now TikTok are all very, very powerful ways of doing that, right? Hell, we're doing it right now ourselves, full disclosure, right? We're doing this podcast. We've got this banter. We're chit-chatting. We're sharing little details, little drips of our lives in detail. You know, Katelyn's in Costa Rica, and she's living a specific life that's kind of interesting. Alex is a really good runner who is living in Toronto, and he's also on YouTube and doing our YouTube reviews and various other things. And I'm nattering on in this microphone on a regular basis. So we're kind of doing that too, right? So not to get too meta here, but it's an interesting dynamic, and it's, I think, completely obviously taken over culturally, like all social media, but in particular in running as well. So Yeah, I see it as like there's kind of these stages that have happened. I think Alex, you touched upon the impact that Instagram has had. Right around, what was it, like 20,
Around 2015.
Around 2015, because then we started to see, and it was kind of Wild West back then. I remember like influencers popped up, and some of them were doing kind of kind of early Instagram kind of scams, which was like you'd pay a company in India usually to basically gin up a whole bunch of fake followers. So you had like suddenly you had 10,000 followers, right? And that got you enough lift that you could go and then turn to a brand and be like, I've got 10,000 followers on Instagram. I'm a runner, like send me free stuff or like or even pay me a bit of money to like post about your shoe or whatever. And then obviously brands got sort of more sophisticated. They started using more sophisticated auditing tools to know whether or not you were legit. There's basic metrics you can look at, like how many likes there are on a post versus how many followers the person has, to see whether or not their followings are legitimate or not. And then so there was the smoothing out of that. And now we're sort of in a situation where I think there's a number of Instagram influencers in the running space that don't make very much money doing this, but they still are stuck having to present this lifestyle and this experience that is very like aspirational and desirable, right? It's like no one's going to watch your channel if you're just moaning about how you don't make any money as an influencer, even though you have like 75,000 followers. Instead, it's, this week I'm off to Valencia. Next week I'm off to, California International Marathon. The week after that, I'm going to Houston, and then I'm going to do these like vlogs about it, or I'm going to, post a bunch of reels about it, and it's all amazing and great. And I'm meeting up with all of my, followers in each town and that sort of thing. And the reality of it is I think it's probably a pretty tough grind.
Likely. And you need, as an influencer, you probably have to play into the idea that you're doing really well because of the snowball effect, right? You somehow feel like there are always eyes on you. And so if you're portraying that you're very successful, you're likely thinking in the back of your mind, well, hey, another brand might notice this and then reach out, send an email. You're piloting your own illusion in a sense. Not saying that all of it is false. I'm sure people do quite well in it. But it must be a tough space to be in because, Michael, you mentioned earlier, some people are turning on influencers. People are becoming a bit more skeptical. And my guess is that now that we're a decade into this influencer movement, it's not only brands that are becoming more sophisticated in choosing who should be an influencer and who they should support, but also viewers, right? We've become pretty smart social media consumers, I think, at this point, and we're wise enough. It doesn't matter how experienced of a runner you are. You're likely wise enough to know that if someone one week starts talking about how this ASICS shoe is the best shoe they've ever had and there's no better shoe than this one, and then the next week say the same thing about the Nike shoe, well, then you lose trust in that person, right? So as an influencer, it must be a tough grind too. And so I wonder where it's going for someone who's in that type of business. You wonder if it's maybe a better call. This is what I think is going to happen eventually. Is like a running influencer right now, or maybe the game a couple years ago was to try to get as many brand deals as you could. Now I think it might end up being that brands would prefer to buy an influencer and keep them with them.
Kind of like
so that they don't. Exactly.
Right.
Or if they're not an elite athlete, they basically become a sales rep, which is just a full circle kind of thing, right? Is that instead of being an influencer endorsing everything, you are paid by one company to endorse a product. And then again, and probably go to events with them and run booths and stuff. And then you look back and you say, well, okay, I'm calling myself an influencer, but aren't I just like a classic sales rep from 2007 or whatever it was?
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of what I was going to get to about hearing you guys say that about being like kind of skeptical. I've always been pretty skeptical about influencers, and I feel like if it does go in that direction that Alex is mentioning, I would feel a lot more comfortable with that product or with the promotion of that product, because I would feel like, okay, this person is sticking to their guns, they're sticking with the product, they really do believe in it, and they're just not bouncing around. Because I feel like a lot of influencers that I don't follow so many, so I I feel like I'm a little out of touch and not so into this world as you guys may be. But some that I have started to follow or that I did follow in the past, I just got sick of it and unfollowed, because like you're saying, you just see them with a lot of different products, and products that are competing with each other, maybe not shoes, but maybe with, I don't know, with food or supplements or nutritional products to run, or gels, or I don't know. So one week they're with Hammer, and then the next week they're with Ethic Sport. And you're just, it's, the same kind of idea. And so I kind of lost a lot of trust in watching at least a lot of the influencers that I had begun to watch. But I think if you're going to stick with a brand, like you're saying, absolutely, you're like their sales rep, but you'll have people really believing in it, because like you said, we're getting smarter. We're not just going to believe every single thing an influencer says, especially when they're bouncing around like one of those old, ping pong games.
One brand that comes to mind, and we're going to be totally candid here. I mean, I'm not pulling any punches, right? We have no masters. So one brand that comes to mind that I think made like a pretty sort of poor decision in its marketing approach at a certain point, because at least I noticed that, like, this goes back a bunch of years, but like Noon Hydration at one point was so oversaturated in the influencer market and was so clearly just taking on anybody who wanted to have a like sponsored by Noon Hydration or Noon Hydration athlete, because they wanted to feel like they were, a sponsored athlete. It's effectively
the ambassadors.
An ambassador, yeah.
Yeah.
They're just pumping it hard.
Yep.
With the coupon discount code and whatever, and it just felt very tacky, and it was I think a huge mistake. Now, I mean, maybe a salesperson might disagree with me and be like, yeah, but we also like grew this much and sold this much product at the time. So like, you're wrong, Michael. And that might be the case. But it felt like it cheapened their brand. Although maybe they weren't after brand prestige. They were just after like pure volume and sales and saturation of the market. I have no idea. That comes to mind. You don't really see things have become much more sophisticated, I think, now. And like, even a brand like Lululemon will just outright say, this person is one of our ambassadors, which was kind of like a no-no word even a few years ago, right? Or a word was like, ambassador was code for you're not getting paid, which probably is still the same code language, right? It probably means that Lululemon's not paying the athlete, right? I mean, I think about that 6-day challenge that they did recently, and then there was like, they have athletes and they have ambassadors, and my guess would be the ambassadors are probably not on the payroll. I hope they are, because they're doing a lot of work for the brand, and the brand makes a lot of money, right? So I hope they're getting paid, right?
You would
Especially
hope,
if
you
they
would
have a big
hope they
following.
would be. But I feel like here I saw that happen with a bunch of brands as well, like smaller stores and stuff. But the running store, a couple of running stores here first, or different brands would say, yeah, we're going to sponsor you. Okay, yeah, they're one of our sponsored athletes. And I saw the shift to, we're sponsoring you as athletes and still really not getting paid, maybe with product, and then moving to the ambassador thing. I feel like just that word change, that play on words, made them feel like, okay, now we're not obligated to pay you anything because you're just an ambassador, just trying out the stuff.
Right. We'd be remiss not to mention what like the supposed good side of running and influencing, or the rise of runfluencing supposedly is, and that is that more exposure to athletes gets them paid more money by brands. We don't know that though, right? Like we don't know if Lululemon is actually paying them. What I remember talking to athletes, I did a story on this 3 years ago, and I remember talking to a number of Olympians, bona fide Olympians, professional athletes, who had started to influence or at least post pictures on Instagram. And these are people who didn't really want to do this at first, but they did that just so that they could get more sponsorship dollars and get more eyes and exposure so that companies would pick them up when their sponsorships would end. Some would even have these stipulations inside of their contracts, like you need to post twice a month as part of this contract. And also run 340 in the 1500 or whatever it was. But like, you know, I don't know if that's actually carrying through. Like, you're an athlete, you're making a bunch of posts to get more followings, hopefully to be more than just an ambassador, right? Mm-hmm. You hope that translates to money, because if so, that's a good thing.
A specific conversation I had last year comes to mind, which was I was interviewing the Canadian marathoner Cam Levins, who's the fastest marathoner in North American history, right? He's got the best time if he was American or Canadian. And he also has an American contract, so a bigger contract with ASICS. And he was very candid with me and said, because I asked him like sort of like, what's the deal with your Strava? What's the deal with your relationship with social media? And he indicated that like obviously he's not super into social media, and if you follow his accounts, you can see that he's like he does his part. He checks the box off. It was clearly a contract stipulation, but he's this mythical figure in sort of nerdy elite distance running because he's got this incredible past doing like mega mileage in college. So he's got a huge following in that regard. And then obviously Strava becomes this natural place for him to excel in terms of social media presence, right? And he said that was part of the contract with ASICS, is that he had to post a certain number of times a month on Strava. And that's why he uses Strava to post some, not all of his workouts and runs. And that's how he fulfills that contract. And also, I don't think this is probably conscious, but unconsciously, like, that's further building his brand and his mythology, right? That it's all about his running feats and his mega mileage feats and his incredible workouts, right? But it's an awkward space for athletes, and especially pro athletes or athletes that are on the edge of being pro or Olympic level. Like I think of somebody like Philly Bowden, who is a UK based runner who I believe went to Oregon, if I'm not mistaken, and so did a stint in the US as well. And she's got a decent YouTube channel and following, like 75-ish thousand subscribers on her channel. So it's a pretty popular vlog, and she's regularly posting kind of like a day in the life. It's like a vlog. It is a vlog. And she documented her process of trying to make the Olympics this upcoming year. It didn't work out for her. She also got dropped by New Balance because that was her sponsor. She was part of like a training group in the UK. She got dropped by them and was like really candid about it on YouTube after she got dropped, and was then kind of like, okay, guys, this is now my job. I'm now a YouTuber. I am now going to continue doing this, and I'm basically a solo act now, and I'm transitioning from effectively being an elite runner chasing the Olympic dream to being a YouTuber, to being an influencer, which is a really interesting transition. And as a little bit of a tease, we've been in touch with her, and Jesse, our colleague, our news editor, is gonna do an interview with her in the near future. I'm gonna pick her brain about all this stuff, so there'll be more details about that. Like that, I just did this little teased a future piece for us. Nice. But that's the elite athletes, or sort of on the edge of being elite athletes, are in a really weird predicament right now in that regard, I think. And
yeah, because I think they need to feel like they need to be influencers instead of athletes. Athletes and influencers. Like if you're an athlete, I wonder how many feel pressured that they must be influencers to gain that, to get more sponsorships, instead of like if you think of any other job or any other profession, you don't need to, maybe you do, or maybe some it helps a lot, but maybe you don't need to focus so much on social media and growing your fan base like an athlete would.
I would say it's becoming common in weird places that you wouldn't even imagine. I have a few friends who are around my age, so they're in their late 20s. They're starting out in their careers. I'm talking about a doctor and a chiropractor in particular. These are the two people that come to mind just right now, who've both started their own social pages so that they can gain traction in their area and have people go and see them. It's like, it seems like a part of business. You know,
oh man, there's
there's
dentists on social media now, like, you know, being the like dentist in the tooth health influencer, you know, like social media influencing has permeated all corners of our world. I think that sorry, Alex, I interrupted you. Carry on.
No, now I'm just thinking of someone getting the camera and be like, yo, what's up, guys? Let's gonna take out some molars today. Oh my God, this is awful. Do you imagine being this guy's patient? Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It's like, it's a weird middle to be in. It's a weird middle to be in. I think that for some people, it's a positive thing. It doesn't come with much resistance. I think of Tin Man Elite, which is like this professional running group of mostly guys in the United States who are all quick enough to make a living as professional runners, but who made this YouTube channel that's doing so well. And you got to think that that's probably helped them keep the sponsorship they have with Adidas for a long time. And they seem to be having fun making the channel. And I mean, when it comes to that, maybe it's just like any type of job or career that you make business decisions that don't, you know, automatically or directly affect your output, but also just expand your business. You know, you're a chiropractor. How much time are you going to spend practicing and improving your skills? And how much time are you going to spend developing and growing your business online? Both of those things tend to be important. And I mean, let's be honest, the market has spoken for professional running. It's getting better, but there isn't that much of a market there. There isn't that much money there. And if you want to make it as a professional runner and you tell yourself, all right, I'm going to take a cool video of myself once a day, and this is going to help me achieve my goals, there really isn't much of a problem with that. But I think the tension comes where you compare two people, one professional athlete and one non-professional athlete. You know what? Put myself in this situation. All right, I'm a non-professional athlete, but I have a lot of free shoes because I review shoes.
Yeah.
This is something that, you know, someone who's quicker than me doesn't get. And it's like in those weird little areas that I'll feel the tension and other people might also feel the tension, because there's like this inherent thought that only the best should be able to make a living as a runner. And I totally understand that way of thinking. That's how careers go.
But you're the best at making what should be a very boring shoe review super funny and entertaining.
Yes,
so you are.
That is very true.
You may be a 30-minute 10K
you.
guy, but you're a 27-minute YouTube shoe reviewer in my mind.
There's this saying that goes like, don't try to be the best, try to be the only, which means don't try to be the best at one very obvious thing. Take 2 or 3 things that you like and become the best at the combination of those things. So I'm not saying I'm on a mission to become the best. Actually, I'm on a mission to become the best runner / weird skit maker of Brooks Ghost shoes. And I challenge anyone to come and take that title from me.
Words of wisdom.
Throw down the gauntlet. Bring it on.
I love it. I love it.
I would say, like, to start to wrap this subject up, I would say that when it comes to influencers, and the reason why I think we hooked into this subject and we've been chattering about it over the last couple of weeks, and certainly the last week, is because a topic we discussed last week on the pod, which was the big debacle, the big brouhaha around Spring Energy, the gel nutrition
Awesome
company,
sauce.
and the Awesome Sauce controversy. For those who were not paying attention to that, because it's in some respects on the surface kind of a like trivial controversy, because it's a gel that claimed it had a certain number of calories and carbohydrates. Turns out it had like less than half, maybe even a third in each gel. So big scandal, controversy, accusations that it was a fraudulent product, so on and so forth. But the reason why I think people were upset about that and really got got worked up about it is because of the influencer relationship to that product. A couple of prominent coaches that a lot of people liked that had a pretty good reach on social media and were very front-facing people for that brand, and a couple of athletes as well, got pulled into it. And it was this sort of this awkward moment where there was questions about, like, what's your responsibility as an influencer when you're repping a brand? Particularly if, in the case of these two coaches, the Roches, husband and wife duo, they supposedly sort of the initial claim or conceit was that they kind of like co-created Awesome Sauce, this specific gel. And it turns out they backpedaled and said, we actually had nothing really to do with the development of the gel. We just sort of like thought it would be a cool name and sort of thought it'd be a neat brand, a neat product. And the company ran with that. But like, what's the responsibility of those people to those claims? And what's the responsibility of any influencer when they start peddling aware? And then what is going on behind the scenes that we as consumers of their content and followers don't get to see or don't or are unaware of, like. And I think, and this is something that I think about often whenever I'm watching any sort of influencer talking about any sort of product, whether it's running or not. And I've noticed this in running in particular. Even if an influencer on YouTube, for example, says, this shoe was sent to me for free, but it has in no way influenced my opinion of the shoe, and brand X has no say on what I say in this video or how it was edited or so on and so forth. Okay, that may be true. And also, hilariously, is something I think, Alex, we have done in the past. I'm not sure whether or not you do the disclaimer anymore or not, but it is true. However, I always think to myself, yeah, but what about your long-term relationship with that brand? Okay, so if ASICS sends you a shoe and you're like, I'm going to say exactly what I think about this shoe. Are you really saying that? Because you know what's going to happen if you say something really disparaging about the brand? Maybe they may not interact with you anymore. Maybe they may not pay for your trip to the California International Marathon in the future, for example. So whether you're conscious of it or not, in the back of your mind, your relationship with the brand is influencing what you're saying. And also, maybe you're not reviewing the shoes that you don't like, but what does that say about you as a reviewer, right? Like, if you're not reviewing an Adidas shoe because Adidas won't play ball with you because they won't pay for some sort of like brand marketing relationship, what kind of integrity is that? So there's a lot of factors involved here. And I don't mean to sound so heavy-handed and critical here, because it's a very difficult space to navigate. And a lot of these influencers sort of came to it organically, right? They probably, most of them started not by saying like, you know what I want to do is I want to become an influencer and I want to get a whole bunch of free product and I want to get paid to like go to the New York City Marathon and like shill New Balance shoes for the weekend. Like, I don't think most people think that way. They're like, I love running. I'm really interested in gear and tech. I really want to talk about these shoes that I'm interested in. So I'm just going to like make some videos because I'm interested in also trying to make a YouTube channel. Like, it just seems like a fun thing to do, like a fun hobby or a fun side project or side hustle. And then it develops into something bigger than that. And they're not business people and there's no business plan initially. And then it's sort of like this job, because that's what it is, finds them over time. And we're all victim to the same predatory aspects, the same predatory design of social media, which is we love attention and we love the likes, right? And we love to win, and everything is gamified. So it's very intoxicating once you start building a platform. And it's very difficult to have ethics when you're trying to get likes and you're trying to then also maybe keep your head above water and get paid after you've maybe quit your full-time job to become a YouTuber, right? So it's a complex, I think it's still like a pretty complex space that is continuing to evolve. And I'm curious
I
to see
think-
where it goes.
I think that because it's so tough and complicated to assign rules to the influencer, the way I think about it is maybe around the consumer. As someone, it might be more helpful to ask, what information should I take in from influencers as opposed to our influencers giving us the right information? I think as someone who's like, who has done shoe reviews online, but also who listens to other ones, and not just shoes, but everything, right? I get ads for phones and laptops and all this stuff. I don't really listen to the influencers. Let's take shoes. There's a personal variability in there that you can't overcome. Like, if someone likes the Saucony Kinvara, it doesn't mean that I'll like it. In fact, I hate it. It doesn't work for me, though it's a very popular shoe.
I kind of like the Kinvara. So, okay. Yeah, there you go.
Well, there you go. It's not a good or bad shoe. I don't like it. You might like it. And so it's like, okay, well, what do I do as a consumer? Try it yourself. Talk to friends. Talk to friends who don't have any stake in the game. Go out in the world and try these things and take everything you hear online with a grain of salt.
Although I will say, and I'm not just saying this to defend what we do, but I am saying it to defend what we do, which is it's really important to have some sort of editorial integrity and some sort of editorial code of ethics in place that's locked in, so that anytime you're dealing with a brand, you're like, here is my code of ethics. Here are the rules. Here's the guardrails for us. And we're not breaking it under any circumstances. And then also try to review as many different things as possible, good and bad, and pay attention to when a reviewer is saying, or when an influencer is saying something negative about something, and not in a shitty way where they're just trying to gain attention, but in a way where they're being honest and they're trying to like share constructive criticism and feedback and hopefully help their audience. I think that's valuable to pay attention to. And I will say that, Alex, that's what you do. And so kudos to you for doing that. You've got a green light to do that. No one has ever said to you, like, be nice to this shoe or whatever. It's say what you think, and your opinions are your opinions, and that's that. And then obviously, like, different strokes for different folks, right? Like, certain shoes are going to work for certain people, and you're going to have an opinion about it. Like, I'm sure if poor Saucony, now if you review a Kinvara, you're going to be like, I don't like this shoe, but that doesn't mean it's not a good shoe, right? So,
but that's also, that's a pro tip from a somewhat seasoned reviewer, is this is also potentially a way to get brands to respect you. Is to know that you're going to be honest with every product that they send you, so that if they send you a product and you like it and you talk about it, your audience will resonate with it because they know you're not just giving everything tens. And that actually speaks a lot more for a glowing review if everything's a glowing review.
All right, I think we've talked enough about influencers. Is there? Oh, actually,
Do you feel influenced?
Do you have anybody that you really like? I mean, I think that's a huge component of influencing, is you are drawn, the person has a magnetic personality. They are a one of one. They are an intriguing figure. They do things in a certain way, or they're producing the videos or the Instagram content or the TikToks in a certain way that you find compelling. And sometimes you hate watch too. Sometimes you just like, I find this guy like friggin' annoying, but for some reason it's like watching a car crash in slow motion. I'm like, I gotta watch this just because this guy grates on me or whatever. I mean, that is definitely a component of influencing, which is super weird to put yourself in the line of fire that way. And maybe you don't even know that you're doing that, but oh my God, guys, maybe we're doing that. No, but is there an influencer that you guys, are there influencers that you recommend? Like, let's try to be positive here. Let's
go with Alex. Let's go with Alex, because I really don't follow any. I feel like I follow some runners, but they don't work in the same way as like influencing me to use brands. They influence me with like the way that they run. Like, I mean, I follow very few. I know I should probably follow a ton more, but like I love following Courtney DeWalter, but I don't follow her because of the brands. I don't use Salomon products. I don't, use Tailwind products, or, I do use Injinji, which she uses, but it's just a coincidence that that's the product that I use or like. But I follow her because of her and because she's an incredible runner, not because of, or using products that she's peddling. So I think Alex would probably be best to answer this question. You can give us maybe some good examples or people that maybe I could start following to see if I get inspired by an influencer.
I mean, I have a biased take, I think. I don't follow people on Instagram that much for their content. I just don't browse it very much. I gravitate more towards YouTube because I like the longer form stuff. And I tend to follow people who are roughly my speed or faster just because I'm curious about what they do. It makes me want to get to that level. There was one YouTuber that I followed for a long time, Spencer Brown, the Athlete Special. And it's funny to talk about these accounts because people have opinions and there's so much of them online that many of them have received blowback for whichever thing. I liked his videos. He pulled the curtain and showed like what it was like to go under a 4-minute mile. That was in his collegiate career. He had a whole section of post-collegiate stuff. At one point, I think Brooks gave him a professional tryout. And he got to go to the pros training camp for a few months or something like that. And it was the story of a guy trying to make it as a professional runner. And it was no punches pulled, quite honest. I enjoyed that channel and it was a regular upload. I liked Tin Man Elite because of the storyline. It was a group of guys training together. There's a lot of dialogue. I think I just gravitated towards that type of thing too. And oh God, I remember watching the Ingebrigtsens, and that didn't age well. I know there's maybe an impending lawsuit between the sons, Henrik, Philip, and Jakob, who have become some of the best, like absolute best runners in the world, and their coach / father, Geert, who was very intense with them throughout their lives, bordering on abusive potentially. I think that's the allegation. But it produced a crazy YouTube series, I think 5 or 6 episodes of their lives, how they've dedicated everything since childhood to training. And it was a compelling watch, but it was also a little bit horrific at times. But those are probably the 3 channels I've watched the most. Do you have I feel like, Michael, you're not an influenceable guy. You're not into influencers, but do you have a guilty pleasure?
I'd have to say in recent months, a guilty pleasure. I'll give a shout out to Floberg Runs. That's a YouTuber who is, I think, a photographer, videographer by trade outside of running. And the videos are very well done. I, at times, have to admit I kind of hate watch it because there's elements of it that I'm just like, I roll my eyes at it because he and I are roughly the same ability level. So he's like making a big deal out of breaking 240 and whatever. I'm like, dude, it's not that big a deal. Come on. It's a combination of your talent, your age, and work ethic. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's enough that we should be making a big deal out of it. But it's like,
it is a big deal.
Whatever. Come on, Katelyn. It's a big deal to the person where that's what's in front of them, which is an important thing, and it's something that I celebrate it. It's great, but it is a little weird and cringy, and it's kind of the reason why I watch in part. But also I watch it because like the videos are very well produced, they look great, and I think for somebody who's looking to watch some aspirational and really well shot, really well documented videos, they are fantastic. And also, I will give the guy full marks, full credit. He ran Boston this year. He qualified because he ran a very good time to qualify for it. So I would assume he was one of the influencers that got invited to, that didn't get an influencer bib for the Boston Marathon. That was a big talk, a big sort of the chatter at Boston this year was that there were just like a shit ton of influencers crawling around, and none of them had actually qualified for Boston. They were just brought in to peddle Boston, which is so weird because Boston is like the last event. It doesn't need it. It's so strange.
That's a really strange concept, yeah.
I mean, but who knows though? I don't know what the demographic numbers are like. How many young people is Boston attracting? Do they have a Gen Z problem? Are they not attracting enough people who are, say, under the age of, I don't know, 20, just late 20s, who are say 19 or 20? I don't know what the age. 18 is 18. You have to be over 18 to run Boston, I think, something like that. I don't know how well they're doing with like the 18 to 29 demographic, for example. I have no idea. Maybe they're not doing well, and that's the reason why they're reaching out to all these influencers.
Maybe.
And so credit to this dude, Floberg, because he shows up. He's, first of all, like my nightmare. He's being followed by a camera person who's like documenting him running. And he's also getting paced by a pal. But that was a tough day, and he actually ran really well. He put down a really good time. He was very smart about his race, and he kind of delivered on it. Whereas like I found like so many other influencers were just like doing the bullshit song and dance of like, oh, tough day at the office. I don't know what went out there, what happened, but it just the wheels came off at 20 miles, and it's like, well, okay, yeah, that's marathon running, right?
That's a marathon.
So, yeah, and so credit to him for doing well in Boston. And I shouldn't be so hard on what he's trying to do. Like I think you should be excited about what you're doing. You should be passionate about what you do. You have to get up every day and run, especially at his level. Just looking at a video that he made, he was like, what it was like to run 10 miles a day for 30 days. And I'm like, yeah, I've done that. And it's just something you have to do if you want to run under 2:40 for a marathon, unless you're super duper talented, right? So, yeah, he's good. Jeff Peltier, who's a Vancouver guy, a trail runner, and he does these like really beautiful documentary type videos about his experiences around the world running ultras. It's pretty cool. Caitlin, you should check that out.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, I did a really nice one on Moab recently. That was
Okay.
pretty nice to watch. Yeah. Again, though, these are sort of these content products that are very alluring, very intoxicating to watch. They're very like narratively complete. These people are very talented storytellers, right? But is it the truth of life as that person? I don't know. It's an edited version, right? It's not warts and all. And influencers have to put up barriers, which ultimately creates this weird sort of like conflict with the follower as well over time. But okay, we talked a lot about influencers there. I think it was pretty complete. Let's take a break, and then we'll jump on our last topic of the day, which is lighter fare, literally and figuratively, no pun intended. Pre-run, pre-race.
And I get to nerd out.
What do you eat? When do you eat it? Some of our horrible mistakes that we've made along the way. We'll share all that after the break. Be right back. All right, our final topic of the day. And this is one that, especially if you're newer to running, will definitely be of interest. It's like one of the most common questions that I've fielded over the years from newer runners and from runners that are maybe new to something like running the marathon, which is kind of its own different animal altogether from just running. Oh, and certainly ultras, absolutely, because that's a whole other ball of wax altogether. But the question is, what do you eat before a run or a race? How do you time it? And, is the whole carb thing legit or not? So put together a few sort of basic guidelines or tips for how to nail pre-run and pre-race, because they could be a little bit different approaches to fueling, eating, just so it works, if nothing else, and also to fuel properly before a run. Okay, Caitlin, question number 1 for you. Like, how important is it to fuel before a run or a race? And is there a difference between like fueling before a run versus fueling before a race?
Yeah, I feel like fueling, at least in my experience and what I've seen in athletes and what you see, fueling can make or break a race. You don't know how to properly fuel before your race or during your race or in the days leading up to the race, and you could literally just ruin your performance based on not fueling properly. And today we're going to focus just a little bit more on, because there's so much we could get into, because you've got carb loading, which you're talking about maybe 1, 2, 3 days before the race. You're talking about what you eat before a run or a race the morning of, and what you do for your fueling strategy throughout the race. Today we're really just going to touch on, because we just don't have time to go through everything, we're going to just touch on what you would eat the morning of. So, or if you don't run in the mornings, it could be an afternoon or evening run or lunch run or whenever you get your chance. to do your workouts. But we're basically going to talk about the before the run or before the race the morning of. And I feel like most of us know that there's been a big fad with keto diets and fasted running or fasted exercise in general. And, everyone's going to have their own take and what works for them. And like we've mentioned, and we will continue to mention every single time, everything is it depends, because what you eat and how you eat is going to be very different than what I eat and what works for me. So that's why trial and error in running is the most important, piece of advice we can possibly give. But at least we can look at general guidelines and kind of figure out the why. And fasted exercise or fasted running, maybe you can get away with it for a recovery run in the morning after you've fasted all night and you've just had something in the evening for dinner and you wake up and you go for a run. But does that really make you feel good even during a recovery run? I like to fuel before every run. And I just feel like the way that you do fuel is going to be different, as Michael mentioned, like before a recovery run or before a super difficult threshold run or speed workout or before a long run or before a race. So I feel like no matter what we're looking at here or what workout or what race, I do feel like it's really important to fuel no matter what. It's important to know what's going to work for you. It's important to know the timing, what you're going to eat. One, because you just don't want to feel hungry. I don't know about you guys, but if I don't eat before a run, I feel hungry. I get a headache. I get stomach growling, grumbling while I'm running. I mean, I'm obviously not going to perform well if I feel hunger. And the all famous, you don't want to be in a glycogen depleted state, right? We want to make sure our glycogen stores are topped off, carbs, we've got everything, all the energy that we need to be able to perform. And so the why is basically to feel good, to perform well, and to make sure that you can follow through with whatever you have in your plan. You might have a workout where you need to hit paces. Well, if you're fatigued and tired and glycogen depleted, and you're not eating, you're not going to feel well enough to be able to. And if you do it, you'll probably feel terrible. You'll feel better if you eat. So I think, carbs. We'll get into that in a second when we talk a little bit more about what we eat. And we're each going to have something different. But I do suggest fueling before any run, whether it be recovery, whether it be speed work, whether it be a long run, or whether it be a race.
What about timing? Like, just simple example.
Yep.
Just your daily run, like today.
Okay.
If you've run today, like how'd you space it out?
Okay. When I run here at 5 a.m. So I eat a snack at 4 a.m. I like to do the hour before. And
God.
yes, I know it's a huge commitment.
That's the middle of the night, Katelyn. That's not the morning.
Okay.
4 o'clock in the morning
Everyone,
is not
do
the
this.
morning.
Okay, if you run at 8 in the morning or 7 in the morning and you're lucky enough to be able to do that, I just kind of always got on a schedule from being a teacher for so many years. I had to be at the high school at 7 a.m. So if I had to run and then I had to get home and then I had to shower and I had to change and I had to get to work, I kind of got on the schedule years and years ago. So for whatever it is, let's not talk about time. Let's talk about an hour before a recovery run, a speed work. I can handle that 1 hour with a small snack. So if it's going to be either recovery, if it's going to be like today I had to do a threshold run and I was like, okay, this is going to be, you remember my favorite kinds of runs. We know it's going to be super hard, very taxing. And then afterward I was going to go to the gym and do strength training. So I said, okay, I've really got to feel good. So I find something that's like very carbohydrate, calorie dense, but it's not a lot of food. And we can get into like what we eat later. I ate like a very sugar dense vanilla granola, with, and it was like, it only had to be like 2/3 of a cup, but it was, plenty of carbs and tons of calories. And I said, okay, this isn't a lot of food. And so in an hour, I'm not going to feel like I'm full. I'm just going to have all this energy. So for me, it's an hour before. I know some people can get away with eating 15, 30 minutes before a workout. I can't. I still feel like it's a little bit uncomfortable sitting there in my stomach. So I prefer to eat 1 hour before. If we're moving on to a long run, and I'm going to be eating basically breakfast or my first breakfast of the day, it would be 2 hours before. So again, if I'm going to be eating...
You're getting up at 3 a.m.
No, because usually, Perhaps if I'm going to go out for a long run at 5, but usually the long runs are with our running club, and so they're later. They're like at 7 a.m. because we usually have to travel a lot to get to different places. So say like a long run, if I'm starting a little later, it's a little easier.
So you do about 2 hours. You space it out about 2 hours, right?
About
And
2
do you eat
hours.
the same sort of thing, or are you thinking about trying to get a little bit more of a carb intake in because it's the longer effort?
Yeah, I do. I think I do. Toast, jelly, bagels, honey. Like a bagel for me is the max because it's just like a ton of carbs and sugar, packed into the bagel. And if you just put a ton of honey on it, I mean, you can really get a lot of carbs in there. So that's what I would do. That's what I do before a long run, an important long run, or definitely a race. But the race, I don't know about you guys. I want to hear what you guys do and see how we differ with the nutrient timing. But I will eat 3 hours before a race. And sometimes that can be, really extreme because if you're running, usually a race is, at least here in Costa Rica, they're starting at 6 a.m. So we're talking about literally getting up right before 3, eating, going back to rest for a little bit. Look at Michael's face. I love it.
Man.
You guys you have to see Michael's face right now. He's just shaking his head at me.
I wake up at 2:30 in the morning. I go to bed at 6 p.m. to run my race.
You're not too far off there.
Well, that's a commitment to the craft right
Yeah.
there.
So I'd say about, 3 hours before a race. But then for a race, I'm always taking something half an hour, 20 minutes before, popping an energy gel or something, because obviously it's been a while before I've had something to eat. And then obviously, the race strategy, which is for another day. But I think the timing for me, that works best. And that's pretty much, if you look for general guidelines, you'd say pre-run snack 15 to an hour before if you can, because people don't want to get up super early like I do, a couple of hours before a longer run, and then maybe 2 to 3 hours or so before a race. But why don't you guys tell me what you do? What works for you?
Alex.
See, I made 2 cardinal mistakes in my life. When I was a kid, I needed you, Katelyn. Someone told me I needed to have carbs before a race, so my pre-race meal became Alfredo. Didn't matter what time of the day, just Alfredo.
Like a cream sauce?
Yes.
Oh, God.
The type that you get at like an Applebee's and you don't have to eat for the rest of the day. I would have a full plate of Alfredo, and then my stomach would kill at the race, and I would tell myself, my God, I'm nervous. And then it took until grade 12 to find out that I was doing it wrong, and that carbo loading had to happen the day before. Anyway, details.
Okay.
Details are important.
Yep.
In university, I started doing this thing where I would eat 3 hours before the race as well.
Yep.
And I think I nailed that timeline, but I would always try to eat something weird and fancy, like something a bit healthier than my regular meal. So for example, like 2 trays of raspberries, or like a type of fruit that I don't really have very much.
Fiber.
And then so just
Tale of
no.
mistake
of do nots.
Yeah.
This is the do nots. But then what I realized by maybe my 3rd year of university, so I was 20 years old at this point, was just eat things that your body is used to taking in. When I'm in the morning, it's easy. I have the same breakfast every morning. I have a bowl of cereal and a piece of fruit. That's it. When the race is later in the day, well, then you're playing around with meals. So that can get to be a little bit more complicated. But for me, what works with 3 hours before is a meal that's divided into like 3 pretty equal portions between carbs, protein, and vegetables, right? So a pasta or rice, some vegetables, and chicken or salmon. And I try to have it 3 hours before. If I have it too close to the race, then I do feel heavy.
Yep.
And then coffee. 90 minutes before the race, I have coffee. That's what I'm most religious about.
Always.
The food takes care of itself.
Okay.
Why are you so religious about the coffee, Alex?
Because I've led myself to believe that caffeine gives you a boost. I'm a regular coffee drinker, so now I used to not drink coffee, and so coffee actually did give me the boost. Now it just puts me up to baseline, so I'll usually have a double coffee or something a little bit strong, like a double espresso or a double Americano. There are like quite a bit of studies out there that show that caffeine does give you some health benefits or some running benefits when taken before. Fun fact, it used to be banned. Used to be a banned substance back in the day
Yeah. So
for athletes.
my approach is pretty similar to yours, Alex, which is that I'll work my way backwards. Races, absolutely. 3 hours before, it's like it's dialed in. It's part of the tried and true routine that I've stuck with for, I mean, since nearly the beginning, particularly with the marathon. Like you don't screw around with the marathon. So, like as an example, it's really difficult when I'm traveling. You know, Chicago Marathon, Boston is really tricky because there's all of this like weird, screwy travel to get out to the start line on the on the bus of doom that takes you from the city to Hopkinton, and then it's a really tough thing to time that meal. But I try to keep it at 3 hours as well, and I actually practice this for my long runs. Once the long runs get to be 30 plus kilometers, so 19-ish miles, 18 and a half miles. Once they get into that zone and I start doing a longer long run, so, 2.5 hours on my feet type thing or more, I start practicing. Basically, I start using that Sunday as my blueprint or my proving ground for race day. And so I get up. So if I'm doing a long run at the civilized hour of 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't get very hot here, right?
That's
I mean,
true.
it gets
That's
hot,
true.
but it doesn't get like pulverizingly hot. But let's say 8 a.m., 8 or 9 a.m.
Okay.
So when Caitlin's having lunch.
That's
I
right.
was just going to say, that's my second breakfast, Alex.
Yes. When Katelyn is eating lunch and I am getting ready to go for my run, I woke up at 6 a.m. for 9 a.m., 5 a.m. for 8 a.m. typically. And that works really well. Just timing. I also like to consume a lot of fluid, and I practice this because I also do this before a race. I consume an inordinate amount of fluid, probably more than most people would, and I don't necessarily recommend it. But like before a long run, I'll take in like a liter of fluid or more before a long run.
Okay.
And that just helps sort of like regulate my body. I'm well hydrated. I'm peeing a lot in the hour before I'm going out to run. And I know it works for me. So, and I will definitely drink. So I will have a bagel and honey or jam. Or if I'm really if I don't have any of those things in the house, I'll just like take cinnamon and sugar and kind of sprinkle it on top.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. And then also kind of like a warm, nostalgic childhood memory, having like the toast with cinnamon and sugar.
Yeah,
I had that when I
totally.
was a kid, so it's like a comfort food for me. And I absolutely have to have a cup of coffee, and I need to get it into the system soon. And we're going to be TMI here, guys, but like there's a huge element of all this with the thing we're talking around right now. The thing we're all sort of like dancing around as we're talking about like, what should I eat? And how long should I wait before I eat?
And why is that,
shouldn't
Michael?
I eat vegetables? And it's because of poop, people. It's because of pooping.
We're back
we
on.
all need to. Caitlin, we found our way back to poop.
We found our way back to it every
Yeah.
time.
Every damn time. It's the runner's preoccupation. It's timing. That is why we're talking about not eating lots of like super nutrient dense macros, like why we're avoiding lots of fiber, why
Right.
we're not eating, really like Weetabix cereal beforehand,
Right.
why we're not consuming a lot of dairy, why
Bran
we're not
flakes.
not eating our raisin bran.
Yeah.
It's because and why you don't eat vegetables in
Right.
the carb the night before with your pasta dinner the night before the big race or the long run is because you're producing a huge amount of fiber. It's hard in your body, and then it throws everything off. You want to keep things nice and clean and
Yep.
simple and basic and carby. And there's the aforementioned glycogen stores. It's the way your muscles absorb and retain a basic like sugars, basically energy, and they and your body stores it up, and it's in the form of glycogen, and then it's released during a long distance effort. And in fact, lots of studies show that it's not released until until it takes a while to train your body to release it properly. That's why long runs are pretty important, right? So anyway, yeah, so 3 hours before a long run, 3 hours before a marathon for sure. I keep it the same for the 5K and the 10K. I just sort of keep that same practice, about 3 hours. I've experimented in the long run with like what I can get away with before things kind of get a little disastrous. I can get up to 90 minutes before a long run and pull it off, but I just have to like consume a little bit more fluid to kind of get the digestive tract working in my working properly. Yeah. I will say one thing that might upset Katelyn though, which is I do a 5 a.m. run too, Katelyn, and quite often I don't eat anything before. I don't get up. I get up. I run at 5:15 most mornings.
Okay.
I wake up at 5 o'clock. I put on my running shorts. I'm still half asleep. My legs are super stiff, and I walk out the front door, and I'm like, all right, let's do this. And it works pretty well. Everything seems kind of closed and shut down at 5:15 in the morning. So everything, I don't drink coffee. That would be a bad idea. It gets things moving. It's a bad idea. It's a diuretic.
Right.
I don't need anything. I don't even take any water.
But do you feel good? I mean, if you feel okay and it works for you, it's okay.
I feel nothing until about 7 o'clock in the morning.
I see. You don't even know you ran.
Yeah. I just come back and I'm like, oh, there was 10 miles that just got done on my watch somehow. I give this little like, you ran a 10K, Michael badge on my Apple Watch. And I'm like, yes. Okay. That happened. No, I just find like if maybe I haven't been running very much, it affects me a little bit and I feel a little bit tired and kind of gross. And maybe I could have used something to eat, but it just like, I'm not getting up at 5 in the morning, 4 in the morning. I have to get up at 5 because it's where it fits, but that's it. But I find over time, it doesn't really affect me. For a recovery run, for a workout, it's very different. For a workout, I then employ a similar strategy at a different point in the day because I typically do my workouts on Thursday evenings. Kind of after
but
work.
you've been eating.
I've been eating throughout the day. And I do, and today's we're recording on a Thursday. So today I'm approaching things in a certain way. And I would recommend others do this as well. If you have an evening workout, which is tricky because you've been consuming food all day and it's tough to get things timed properly. But I try to think about things in terms of like, I will stop. I have to be very careful about how much I snack in the afternoon. I eat a carby lunch and I switch to liquids after about 2. And I actually try to avoid drinking an afternoon coffee for aforementioned diuretic reasons. So that's my strategy. Okay. And yeah, so I try to, last thing I'll put in my body would be, 3 to 4 hours out. And it is true. I get hungry and I get the growl and I get the like, oh man, I should have eaten something. But a decade or more of experience has told me that being a little bit hungry going into a workout versus having a full complicated tummy is the better choice. So that's my approach.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we want to avoid any GI problems. Like we're always circling back. So that's why we say, if you can stick to the simple carbs, don't try to eat a lot of vegetables. But like in Alex's case, he just told us he's able to eat a portion of vegetables. He's able to eat a portion of protein and he feels good. And so that's why, you've got to try it out. I don't. Before, the night before, I'll do pasta. I'll do simple carbs almost all the way, just because that's what works for me. But I feel like if you can handle it and you can have that, the 3 macros in there and have a little fat, a little protein, a little carbs, and some vegetables, and you can handle it, it's fine. But I think that, the simple carbs is what works for me. It's easier to obviously it's going to be used for energy. The protein and the fat's a little harder to break down, all that stuff. But one thing that I absolutely want to highlight that Michael said that I think that we have to practice it a lot. And so when Michael mentioned that, we have to try this and start doing it before all of our long runs is absolutely paramount to being able to figure out what you're going to do on race day. And it's with absolutely everything. And we always talk about that, the golden rule, don't try anything new on race day. I think we all have fun stories we can tell about that. I've got a great one. And guess what? It circles back to our favorite topic. So I feel, I feel that's it. Practice your fueling, trial and error. In your training runs, it's not the end of the world. In your long runs, it's not the end of the world. We want everything to go well, but that's the time to try it out. So that's the best advice I think that we can give, is to try to figure out how much, what sources work for you. Because we can give you the general guidelines, and you can say, okay, for a recovery run, 20 grams of carbs is going to work just fine. A piece of toast and some honey. Or for a workout, I need 40 grams of carbs. And people are probably thinking, well, how much is that? And how much do I need? Well, if you weigh more, there are so many factors that could mean that you might need more or that you might need a little less. And so the trial and error is super important. And so please start doing that. If you're not used to eating, maybe try something out, and you might be like, wow, I just felt incredible on this run. Someone that maybe is like Michael and doesn't eat and wants to try to eat, and maybe will feel better because they eat. And then you decide, is the sleep more important? In Michael's case it is. Or is it that I felt a little better in my run? That's more important for me right now, or in this specific training cycle that's a little more important for my goal. So maybe I'm going to give it a try. So trial and error, 100%. Figure out what works. Figuring out what works for you is just super important. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention again, because I feel like it's like the golden rule.
I'll give you guys some real-time feedback, which is I'm doing a workout in about an hour and a half, and my tummy is starting to growl a little bit because I'm getting a little bit kind of hungry. Mm-hmm. I'm going to ignore it, because I would rather have a relatively empty stomach and be well hydrated, of course, than to have some sort of horrible explosion. Okay, so let's wrap it up with some more TMI. Stupidest thing, Alex. Stupidest thing you've ever done. I mean, besides the Alfredo, which is just like chef's kiss, man. Like, that's just incredible pull there. Dumbest thing you've ever done pre-race eating wise.
Oh man, I feel like I gave you my stupidest thing. Although a runner-up would be in 2017, I was in Montreal for an indoor track meet. The race was before dinner, but after lunch, and I didn't know what to get for lunch. And for some reason, I settled for supermarket sushi.
Oh no.
Because you're like the rice, right?
Yeah, the rice.
Because I'm like the rice. You think of the rice, you don't think of the poisonous fish or the wasabi. I dropped out of the race. I had a brutal race. It was at 3,000 meters, and after 2K, I was way off pace and felt terrible. And it could be the sushi, could be something else.
Probably the sushi.
We'll let you blame it on the sushi.
We'll blame it on the sushi. But I think that moment solidified it for me. It's like, okay, don't try new things. Don't try new things to get a weird new little edge on race day. Stick with the regular.
Yeah. No. This is why I'm against things like faddish stuff, like diets and like the keto hype thing. And like, I get it. We were once Homo erectus or whatever, and we were, hunter-gatherers, and we would just eat one meaty meal a day and survive on that and run dozens of kilometers to hunt for that. But there's a lot of science that points in the other direction, which is we need to fuel on carbs before we run. So just balance out your meals otherwise. You can go carb heavy for pre-workout, pre-long run, but go be balanced otherwise, and hit your food groups. Katelyn, what's your tell us a story, Katelyn.
Okay, I'm going to tell you a story. I am very square and nerdy when it comes to my running. I bring Tupperware when I travel for races. Like, I am that kind of runner. So I don't want to have any stomach problems because I'm just prone to it. So I figure everything out. And I'm getting ready to run an 80K. And actually, it's the famous one I was talking to you guys about that used to be the North Face Challenge. So I was super excited about it, really trained. And we're at the night before, they always do like a race briefing. And they tell you what the markings are going to look like. And they go over, the ins and outs of the race. And so we're all there super excited, just like hundreds of people anticipating the race. And we're leaving there some booths, with product. And an entrepreneur who was here had been producing some new granola bars. And, they were packaged up, and she was handing them out. And she handed them out to a friend, my husband and I, and we all took one. My husband, however, did not eat it. My friend and I did. And it didn't take more than a few hours to begin to have stomach issues. And I said, okay, well, this is going to pass. This will be fine. Got to the race, literally stopped 5 or 6 times, like serious food poisoning. But I was like, but I'm in second place. So I'm doing so well. I'm going to continue. I'm going to push through. And I did, which is not recommended because I was completely dehydrated by the end of the race, because not only is it 90 degrees and humid where I was running, but I was also not able to, let's say, replenish my fluid as fast as I was getting rid of it. So it was just like, why did I do that? And my friend, the same exact thing happened to my friend. So I feel, okay, like Alex can say, I want to blame it on the sushi. Maybe if you had another person there and the same thing happened to them and they ate the sushi, we were both like, why did we do that? That was like the stupidest decision we could have ever made. He dropped out of the race. He was the smart one who said, I have food poisoning.
And you finished it.
I did. And I do not recommend that was the smartest idea. But as I was running, I was like, well, if I still feel well, I mean, if I obviously I had to take the stops, and you feel well after those stops if you can just keep hydrating up. But it was definitely not an ideal race. And I don't suggest that someone would try to kind of push through in those sort of circumstances. I said, this was like when I was really starting out my running career. It was a while ago, and I was just excited, and I wanted to finish the race. But please don't take any handouts the night before a race. Don't try anything new. Don't eat anything that someone gives you. So the moral of the story.
Wow.
Yeah,
Me and my friends from college have this thought experiment that's like, you're leading a race, but you need to poop. Do you stop or do you just keep going and hope for the best? And now I know which team you're on.
Well, in an
Why
ultra,
did we circle
at least you've got nature's toilet all around you, so you can pull off to the side and take care of business. But in say a road 5K in
It's
an
not happening.
inner city core,
Or a track.
Oh my God.
you're on full display. Yeah.
Track. No.
That's a tough call, because that's a really embarrassing thing to go through, and it's not. I mean, I've never gone through that. I think I'd stop. And
Yeah.
it's not a pride thing. It's just there's something really crass about shitting yourself in a race that I just think it's like, I'm not sure it's worth it. Right? I'm just not sure. That's actually a good, it's like kind of a good runner, like one of these fundamental like personality quiz type questions. It's like, what type of runner are you? Are you the, like you said with your friend, it's like, are you the person who you're winning a race? Do you shit yourself to win the race, or do you pull out of the race in order to take care of business?
Yeah, I'm not doing that. No.
Yeah. I am the latter. Maybe I'm a lesser runner for it, but Alex,
No.
Well, I'll turn the question on you. Which runner are you?
Well, they say a broken clock is right 2 times a day, and to win a 1500, you got to run past your own poop at least 3 3/4 times. So,
Yeah,
I would do it.
you do it. Oh my God!
I'm kidding. I'm kind of bluffing. Maybe in my younger days, not now. Now that I have a job and stuff, I think it would be tough to pull off.
You're like, the Instagram post would be bad. Yeah. You like live stream.
Yeah, in this social world of influencing and such.
You end up a story on our site. That's what happens.
Someone is videoing.
Jesse's
someone's
gonna
recording.
interview me.
Yeah.
No,
thanks.
There was, about 10 years ago, there was a story. This poor guy, like he shit himself at some point in the race, and I think he won the race. And it's so awful. And you can find, it was like a meme. It was a meme I'm sure it still is a meme. I haven't seen the meme around in a while, but like that guy became sort of known because he was the guy who shit himself in a race, and that's anyway.
I don't want that
Yeah.
name.
Not worth it.
My probably the dumbest thing I've ever done pre-race was, okay, so I don't know if I've told you guys this story before. I went and did, as a media trip, I went and covered or ran as an experience to write kind of a fluffy tourism piece about the Loch Ness Marathon in Scotland. Okay. And I was super excited because I'm like, I'd always wanted to go to Scotland. You literally run around Loch Ness. It's like, that's the marathon course, is around this beautiful loch in the Scottish Highlands. Incredible race, by the way. Incredibly well organized. Beautiful event. Highest recommend. It's fantastic. Really cool part of the world. But I didn't really do my homework, and I was planning on doing another race afterwards as my big goal race. And I was like, and it was a bit of a rushed media trip. It kind of got put together at the last minute. And I was like, yes, I'll absolutely go. And I was thinking to myself, I'll just run the half. You know, I'll go. I won't run the whole marathon. I'll just run the half. It'll give me enough of an experience of the race that I can write about the weekend. I can write about the experience. You know, everyone will be happy, right? Speaking of being an influencer, right? Appeasing your masters. And I get there, and the night before the race, okay, first, I'm staying in this lovely little inn in the Scottish Highlands in Inverness, where the race starts and finishes. And I think to myself, I'm just going to jog a half marathon. I'm not even going to run it very fast. I'm just going to go out for basically kind of like a little bit of a medium-ish long run. Great. I believe the race was in September, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, I'll eat whatever I want the night before. There's no pressure on me to have to eat the pasta meal or whatever. So I go to the dining room of the little inn, and they've got like I think it was like a roasted Cornish hen with mashed potatoes and gravy, and it was just like this like pile of brown wonderful food, and I had 2 pints of beer. I was just like, yeah, fuck it, I don't care. I'm just gonna eat whatever I want, right? Like, and so I ate this pile of rich brown food and downed a couple of Scottish ales to wash it all down. And then I ran into the race person afterwards, the organizer, and was like, "Oh, hey, is it cool if I just run the half tomorrow morning? Like, you know, I'm planning on running, I think it was Chicago or something like that in a month's time. It's okay if I just downgrade to running like the half." And he was like, "What half marathon?" And I was, and then I had this realization that I was in for 26.2 miles the following morning. And I had done zero prep and ate this like super heavy meal at it was like 9 o'clock the night before. I'm just like, I have just done everything wrong. I'm not hydrated. I just drank a whole bunch of beer. I ate I ate a small animal in full. I'm like, oh my God. Anyway, I didn't have I had nothing to hydrate with the next morning. I don't think their kitchen was open first thing in the morning, so I don't know if I don't know. I think I went to a corner store and bought a banana, and I was like, I guess this is going to be it. You had to get bussed out to the start line, so there was this gap before the start. I did everything wrong. Everything wrong.
Oh, no.
Ran a great marathon the next day.
Did you?
Yep. No stomach issues, nothing. I just drank a bunch of water before the race.
You got lucky.
I got lucky, I think.
Yeah.
But also, I was fairly fit at the time, too. So I think that was a factor, and I didn't run like a hard, all-out marathon. I found somebody to run with, and I just ran with him the entire time, and we chatted and had a really good experience, and I made a friend.
Nice.
And it was a great race, a great experience, a very beautiful race. I did not shit myself in the race, which was great. So,
that's a plus.
I mean, but that was definitely the stupidest thing I've ever done before a race, and I could have paid dearly for it. And I do not recommend a Cornish hen and 2 pints of beer and gravy the night before a marathon. Not a great idea.
Noted.
Okay.
Well, this is neither here nor there, but your story about this race, while well written, didn't contain all of these graphic details, but it was the first Michael Doyle piece I've ever read. I remember it.
Get out. Okay.
Oh, really?
I was deciding whether or not I should write for you. I had never met you in my life. And so I thought, okay, can this guy write? So I pulled up a story, and that's the one I read. And I quite liked it. And now I'm glad that I know the full,
That's
the
nice.
full story.
That's a nice.
There's
that's a
the
nice-
story behind the story. The story I
Yeah.
should have written is about how I did everything wrong the night before, and it still panned out okay. Yeah. All right. Well, final thing. Weirdest thing I've ever seen someone else do. I saw a guy eat like a huge chunk of cheese like 30 minutes before running a race once.
Okay.
Ew.
Like a huge chunk of like Jarlsberg cheese, just like gnarling on a chunk of cheese. And I was like, "What are you doing, man?" And he was like, "Oh, I always eat a bunch of cheese. I always get really hungry during a race, so I just
Okay.
eat a bunch of cheese beforehand." Like,
Whatever
never
works,
bothers
I
you?
guess.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah. All right, guys. I think that was pretty comprehensive. I think we covered everything you need to know about what to do pre-race in terms of fueling, eating, and pre-run timing. I think the takeaways are practice
Yep.
in practice, practice on your long runs, practice on your easy days. Figure out what works for you. Seems like easy days. About an hour beforehand, you should be okay. Eat something light, carb rich. Long runs, 2 to 3 hours for sure. A bit more heavy, bit more carby. Make sure to drink a lot of fluid with that because carbs need fluid. And you should be good. And maybe coffee if you're a coffee drinker to get things going. All right. That's it for the Marathon Handbook podcast for today. Make sure to follow us on all the socials. We're pumping out the hits every single day. We're now getting into doing a lot of like vertical video content where we're commenting on, giving our perspective, our point of view on what's happening in the world of running. Myself and our colleague Jesse, we're doing that on a regular basis. Alex is doing these amazing reels and YouTube shorts that are super fun and kind of give you a little glance into the inner life of the runner from a pretty funny perspective. Kudos to you, Alex, for doing those. Those are awesome.
Yeah, they're so funny.
And you see inside my condo.
And you get to see inside the inner life of Alex and feel like you know him. He's influencing you. And follow us on YouTube. Alex's shoe review videos are the gold standard of shoe review videos, I feel. And you should check them out. They're amazing. And our newsletter. Katelyn produces half the newsletters. We're at 5. Well, not half. I guess it's. Are you doing 2 or 3 a week, Katelyn?
I'm doing 2.
You're doing 2 a week. Jesse
We've got
does the other
Ambi,
3.
And
Oh,
Ambi's
sorry.
on Friday.
Jesse does 2, and then Ambi is on Friday. We have 5 newsletters a week.
Yep.
Everyone is different and special in its own way. They're really great. We just went through sort of revamping the look, the sort of fit and feel of them, and I think that they're pretty slick and nice and easy to read. That was our goal with that, was to build it, to revamp the newsletter so that it's really enjoyable to look at, as well as is content rich. It's like your pre-run or race meal. And in fact, we're sending them out super early. We're sending them out at like 5:55 a.m. Eastern time every morning so that it's in your inbox when you get up to go for your run, unless you're Katelyn, and then it's in your inbox from when
The
you get
middle
back
of the
from your
night.
run.
No, I get up in the middle of the night.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening and watching. And subscribe, give us that 5-star rating, and thanks for listening.